To start a new drawing, click this drop-down arrow, click New, and select Acadiso 3D template for metric units and click Open. Make sure to work on parallel projection by clicking this drop-down arrow by the view cube and select parallel. And I'm gonna bring my drawing to front view, so click Custom View, select Front. And I'm gonna open the files. So this is where I created a folder where I stored all the parts that I did previously. So I'm gonna open part 1 up to part 8. So just select that and press the Shift key and select the part 8 and click Open. I could have used XREF, but this is easier for me to edit individually. Now I'm gonna open the reference drawing, so open again. So this is assembling reference. So click Open. I'm just gonna minimize this one first. So this is where I'm gonna assemble the part. So I'm gonna name this one as save as assembly. Alright, so I'm gonna start from part 1, which is the hand wheel. So just copy that or select, right click and select clipboard and select copy with base point. Click anywhere near the object, click here and select assembly and then Control V to paste and click somewhere here. Now I'm gonna close the hand wheel. And the next one would be part 2, which is the body. So select this one. Clipboard, copy with base point, click somewhere here and go back to assembly. Control V to paste somewhere here. So body is done, so I'm just gonna turn it off. And then part 3 is the cover. So select the object, right click, clipboard, copy with base point, click somewhere here and go back to assembly. Control V to paste. So part 3 is done, so I'm just gonna close that. Then part 4 is the spindle. Copy, clipboard, copy with base point, click somewhere here, go back to assembly, Control V to paste and click somewhere here. So close this one. Part 5 is the valve. So copy this one. So select the object, right click, select clipboard and copy with base point, click somewhere here, go back to assembly and Control V. Alright, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're done with part 5, so I'm just gonna close this one. Then part 6 is the bridge or the yoke. So copy with base point, click somewhere here, go back to assembly, Control V to paste. And then the next one would be, so I'm just gonna close this one now. Next one would be stud valve and seat gland. So I'm just gonna copy this. Clipboard, copy with base point, click somewhere here, go back to assembly and Control V to paste. Alright, and the hex nut, copy, clipboard, copy with base point, click somewhere here, go back to assembly and Control V. Now I can close this one now. And this one. and arrange my windows. So go to home, and inside the view panel, select tile vertically. Oh, my assembling reference is here, so I'm just gonna open this one and tile vertically, and just gonna adjust the width of my windows. All right, so the first thing I'm gonna do is for this one, so go to home and select the globe icon here inside the coordinates panel, and I'm just gonna turn off the grid and press the shift key and hold down the wheel of your mouse to turn this around. Now as you can see here, it's not, so I'm just gonna move this one, move somewhere here, move. Now it's easier. Now I'm gonna bring my drawing to top view, and I'm gonna slice the body because it's easier for me to manage. So go to solid, select slice command inside the solid editing panel, select the object you want to slice, right click and specify start point. I'm gonna start from the center, go sideways, you can go that way too or this way, and go down to the command prompt and click both sides. So now we have two objects here, but what I'm gonna do is hide this one. So select the lower part, right click, hover over isolate and select hide objects. I'm gonna bring this to southwest isometric and attach first the valve seat, which is this one here. So grab this one here, move, and select the quadrant somewhere here. So shift right click and select quadrant. You can tell it's quadrant because of that diamond symbol. Now I'm holding the quadrant and attach it to the endpoint here. So shift right click, select endpoint, this one here. I'm going to change this to polar tracking. By the way, go down to the status bar and make sure your dynamic input is on, polar tracking, object snap tracking, object snap, and selection cycling. And the next one would be the valve, which is this one here. I should change the color of this one. Okay, go to home. And this is layer 2. I should rename this one. So layer 2. Layer 2. So this one. So rename. So type in valve. And to change the color, click the box and change it to orangey color. All right. So now I'm gonna move this one. So move, and then locate the quadrant. As you can see here, this is the quadrant, this point. So locate the quadrant. So shift right click and select quadrant. So this one here, and attach it to the quadrant of this valve seat or seat valve. So shift right click and select quadrant. So this one here. Now I'm gonna check if the components are intersecting. So you go to solid, select inside the solid editing panel, select interfere, and just window the whole thing. Enter and enter again. And if you go down to the command window, it says here objects do not interfere. So we're good. Now the next one to attach is the spindle. So for the spindle, if I grab this one, so select the object and select move, it would be very hard to grab the very center here. So what I could do is draw a line. I'm gonna change this first to wireframe and bring this to front view. And I know from the reference drawing that distance from the center of this This portion here to the very bottom is 6. So I'm gonna draw a line. So L for line. Shift right click and locate center. So just hover over and you can tell it's the center of the object there because of the circle. And move your cursor downward for 6 units. Now if I turn this around, now I could select the object now, include the line, move, and snap that in point. Now I'm holding the very tip of that object and attach it. Wait, I wanted to attach it here. See this one here, the center of this groove here. So what I'm gonna do is change this to X-ray. I think it's easier to see. So move, shift right click, snap the in point here, and attach it to the center of this groove. So shift right click, select center, and snap that. So if I change this to realistic, now it's centered. I'm gonna check again using interfere. And it says here, objects do not interfere. So we're good. And the next one to attach is the cover. So this cover here, I'm gonna attach the quadrant from here to this endpoint here, this one here. All right, so move, shift right click, quadrant, snap the quadrant here, and attach it to the endpoint here. So shift right click again and select endpoint. All right, and the next one would be the gland. So this one is the gland. So move, shift right click, snap the quadrant, and attach it to the quadrant inside, but it's hard to see. So what I'm gonna do is use X-ray. So this is the, or if I bring this to front view and change this to wireframe, so this is where I'm gonna attach it, which is this one here, this corner. All right, now where is the gland? All right, so move from quadrant, so shift right click quadrant and attach it to the endpoint. So shift right click and select endpoint. So this one here, or quadrant, because this is not cut. So shift right click again, select quadrant. So this one here is the quadrant. There. All right, change this to conceptual. Now I'm gonna attach the stud. So select the object, right click, move, shift right click and select center. So I'm gonna locate the center of this one. So we need, there are many plus signs here. This bottom one means it's the center of this one here. The next one would be for that circle, and the next one, and so on. So just grab the very bottom, attach it to this center here. So shift right click and select center over here. Now I'm gonna attach the bridge for now. So move, hold down the shift key and the wheel of your mouse at the same time to turn the object around. Snap the center, snap the center here. There you go. And now I'm gonna attach the nut. So I'm just gonna copy from the center and attach it to the center of this hole here. So shift right click and select center and enter. Now if I use interfere command, You can tell this red sign, it means that there is interference. What happened is there is a thread. If I check the picture here, there's a thread over here. So I'm gonna use the nut to create a thread. So what I'm gonna do is maybe change this to realistic first. I'm just gonna change the color or make the color lighter for this hex. So just click the box for hex and just move it somewhere here to make it lighter. There. Or maybe lighter, more lighter. Hex over here. So copy this one, copy selection, specify base point, click anywhere on the screen or any endpoint somewhere, as long as you paste it back on the same spot. So click here, left click again to space and enter. Now there are two of these. If you click this one here, oops, you can tell there are two hex here. So what I'm gonna do is use this one to subtract. So subtract command inside the solid editing panel. Select the object you want to keep, which is a stud. Right click and select the object you want to use to subtract, which is the hex. So now if I isolate this one, hover over isolate, you can see the thread. So I'm just gonna end object isolation. Now I'm gonna copy the nut and the stud. Oops. All right. Select that and select this one. Copy selection from, so shift right click from the center, this bottom center, and attach it to the center here. So shift right click, center of this hole, and center of this hole here. So shift right click again, center, and center of this hole here, and enter. Now again, I'm gonna do, so solid, go to solid, interfere, see here, objects do not interfere, so we're good. Now I'm gonna attach the wheel, but first, as you can see here, there's a gap in here. I'm supposed to, I was gonna put a bushing here, but I've decided to just cover this one. So what I'm gonna do is isolate this object and edit this one. First, I'm gonna grab the size for this circle. So go to home. Inside the solid editing panel, click this drop down arrow and select copy edges. I'm just gonna copy this edge here. I think that's enough. Enter. Specify base point. Click here and click again and enter. Alright, so I'm gonna select that and the arc and that one and isolate. See this one here, it's there is okay, if I bring this to front view, so this is what I did. So there's a distance here, so I'm just gonna measure the distance, annotate dimension, endpoint to this endpoint here, and go sideways. There's extrusion of 10, so I'm just gonna delete that. So what I'm gonna do is go to home and click this drop down arrow over here, this one, and select delete faces to heal. Bring this closer and click that. Okay, wait, here first, click that, click this one and bring this closer and select that and enter again. Let me check if it worked. Oh, the two are healed, but this one is not, so delete face, enter and enter again. Now it's healed. Now I'm gonna create a circle from center and just change the direction of your z-axis vector first. So z-axis vector inside the coordinates panel and point this upward. Make sure your polar tracking is on. Just point this upward. Now we're gonna work on this. This is gonna be our XY plane. So C, snap the center, snap that midpoint, and extrude this circle. Select circle here and extrude it up for 10 units. Now I'm gonna union. So select this one first and this one. Now it's one object. Now you can erase the arcs. So C for circle, snap the center, and type D for diameter option. I'm gonna create a hole for 32.01 and use press pull command. Hover over that hole. Once it turns blue, left click, release your finger and left click again. Now I'm gonna bring back my hidden object. So isolate and object isolation and isolate these two again. So it's easier for me to manage without the other objects showing. So what I'm gonna do is copy this one. To specify base points, click anywhere and click on the same spot to paste and enter. Now we have two of these. Now I'm gonna use that to subtract. So subtract command, select the object you wanna keep, right click and select the spindle for subtracting. So if I isolate this one, you can see there's a thread inside already. So just right click anywhere on the screen, hover over isolate and select an object isolation. So we're good here. Now the next thing to do is attach the wheel. Now attach the hand wheel. So select the object, move, locate center of this hole. So just shift right click, mid between 2 points, midpoint to midpoint. Now I'm holding the center and attach it. So shift right click and select center. And now I'm gonna create or heal this one because this is way too big. So delete face inside the solid editing panel. So click this face and select that face, enter and enter again. So if I isolate this one, you can see that the hole is gone. So I'm just gonna undo. Now I'm gonna copy this one and specify base point. You can click anywhere and left click again to paste on the same spot and enter. Now there are two of these. I'm gonna use this one to subtract. So subtract command, select the object you wanna keep, right click and select the object that you want to use to subtract. So if I isolate this one, now the hole is there. Alright, and the next thing to do is create the thread as shown here. There's a thread inside, so I'm gonna use this hex nut. So copy selection. I'm just gonna move it somewhere here and copy this one from center. Shift right click and select center and attach it to the center. So shift right click again, snap that center. I'm gonna copy this one, copy selection, specify base point, click anywhere on the screen, left click again to paste and enter. Now there are two nuts here, so I'm gonna use one of them to subtract. So subtract command, select the object you want to keep, right click and select the object you want to use to subtract. So if I isolate this one, you can see the nut in here. So an object isolation. Now the next thing to draw is the bolt in here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm isolate this one first, or create measure this one. So distance from midpoint to midpoint. So the height for this one is 68. So what I'm gonna do is copy edges inside the solid editing panel. Copy that edge, specify base point, click the center and click back on the center to paste and exit. So I'm gonna select the circle and extrude it downward for 68. And the distance is, the dimension for this one, in point to in point, is 1, and I think the other one is 1 too, so I'm just gonna delete that. So go to solid, select inside the solid editing panel, select chamfer edge, and click distance inside the command window, enter 1, enter, and for the second distance, enter 1 again and enter, and select this edge here. And this is supposed to be move, and locate center, the second plus sign, this center there, and attach it to the center of this hole, because this part here that's been chamfered is sticking out. And now I'm gonna create the thread here, up here. So I'm gonna use this one again. So copy selection, I'm gonna paste it somewhere here, and move from center, and attach it to the center of this hole. Now copy this one, specify base point, left click again to paste, and enter. Now subtract command, select the object you want to keep, right click and select the object you want to use to subtract. So if I isolate this one, you can see there's a thread. I'm just gonna end object isolation. Now I'm gonna create the thread at the bottom. So what I'm gonna do is isolate this one and this one here, so I could concentrate on these objects. And maybe I'm just gonna hide this one first. Alright, so I'm gonna create a thread here. So go to home, inside the draw panel, or click the drop down arrow, select helix, snap the center, snap the quadrant, and the size of the diameter as shown here is the radius is 9, and it's asking now to specify top radius, so just right click and select enter to accept for the same radius, and turn height is 1.5, and bring it up. So axis in point, just bring it above, a little above the body. And now I'm gonna create, so bring this to front view. I'm gonna create the object to use to sweep, and the distance, as you know, the distance here is 1.5 for the pitch, so I'm gonna use half of that. So diameter is 0.75, and Now draw a triangle, but first bring your drawing to front view. And inside the draw panel, select polygon and enter the number of sides to 3. And snap the center. Circumscribe about circle. Snap that quadrant. And change first your drawing to wireframe, so it would be easier to snap the endpoint. So move and snap the endpoint of the helix. So shift right click, select endpoint. Now if I bring this to top view, you can tell that one end of the triangle is perpendicular to the end of the helix. If not, you can 3D rotate. Now I'm gonna use sweep command and select the object you want to sweep. So select this object, right click, enter, right click again and click alignment. And when you read this one here, align sweep object perpendicular to the path before sweeping. And I'm not gonna say yes because it's already perpendicular. Select no. Select the object, right click again, select base point and specify base point. So shift right click, select endpoint. Now select the helix as the path, and if I change this to conceptual, this is how it looks. So if I now bring this to front view, I could delete this one now and slice this object. So go to solid and inside the solid editing panel, select slice command, select the object you want to slice, right click and specify start point. So shift right click, select quadrant, start from the quadrant, go sideways. Make sure your polar tracking is on or ortho mode and go sideways. And go below that cutting point to select, to specify a point on the desired side. Slice again. Select the helix, right click and specify a start point. So quadrant, start from quadrant, go sideways and go above the cutting line. Now we have our helix here. Before I union the object, I have to copy this one first. So copy selection, shift right click and locate center and attach it to the center. So shift right click again, center of that, shift right click, center, center again, center and enter. Now I'm gonna union the whole thing. So union command. Now the color has changed because of the helix. So just go to home, select the object and change the layer to housing. Now the color is back. Now isolate and in object isolation, I can delete this now. Now if I use, go to solid, if I use interfere command, I'm gonna window the whole thing. Now if you check down below, you can see the red color. It means there is interference. So what I'm gonna do is select this one and isolate. So it will be easier for me. So I'm gonna copy this object because I'm gonna use it to subtract. So copy, selection, specify base point, left click again to paste it on the same spot and enter. Now use subtract command, select the object you want to keep, right click and select the object you want to use to subtract, which is the body. Now if I isolate this one, you can tell that there is already a thread at the bottom. Okay, now copy this one. Copy selection. From center, so shift right click, snap the center. Paste it to the center here. To the center, shift right click again and center. Now it's hard to paste it on the center when the guide is gone, like the circle. Center. So what I'm gonna do is interfere this one again, just to make sure that there is no interference. So objects do not interfere, but I think I lost the circle here. It's hard to locate the center when the helix or the thread is already in. So what I'm gonna do is isolate and select, hover over isolate and select an object isolation, and copy the nut and the bolt. So copy selection. Now I could use this one as base point, the center of this cover, and paste it back to the center here. Paste it back to the center and center here and enter. Now I'm gonna check again. So interfere, select the whole thing, enter and enter again. And if you check down here, it says objects do not interfere. So we're good. And I think we're done. So, oh, here. I'm going to apply fillet here. So, go to solid. Click this drop down arrow. Select fillet edge. And for the radius, I'm going to use 4. I'm going to try 4. And click this edge here. Yeah, 4 looks good. And enter. I'm just gonna save this one and change this to, I'm gonna minimize this one, maximize, and change this to realistic. And I think we are done. So thanks for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon to get notified for the next tutorial, and see you again.